What if I told you that right now, as you're watching this, your brain might be showing you warning signs that you've been ignoring? Before we dive in, I need you to do something for me. Think about the last time you walked into a room and completely forgot why you went there. Was it yesterday? This morning? Now, I want you to ask yourself an uncomfortable question. When does a simple memory lapse stop being normal and start being something more serious? Here's something that will shock you. Every 3 seconds, someone in the world develops dementia. Every 3 seconds. By the time you finish watching this video, hundreds of people will have received a diagnosis that will change their lives forever. But here's what the medical community doesn't want you to know. Many of these cases could have been prevented or significantly delayed if people had recognized the early warning signs and taken action. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about today, because your brain is sending you messages right now, and it's time you started listening. The first sign is so subtle that most people dismiss it as stress or aging, but it's actually one of the most reliable early indicators. Imagine this. You're having a conversation with an old friend, someone you've known for years. You're telling them about something that happened last week, something important, something that should be fresh in your memory. But as you're talking, you realize you can't remember specific details. You remember the feeling of the event, the general idea, but the specifics, they're gone. You brush it off. I'm just tired, you tell yourself. It's been a long week. But here's what's really happening in your brain. Short-term memory loss isn't just about forgetting where you put your keys or someone's name at a party. Those are normal. What we're talking about is a pattern of forgetting recent conversations, events, or information that you just learned, and needing to ask for the same information repeatedly. Your brain is like a filing system, and in Alzheimer's disease, the filing clerk responsible for new memories is starting to fail. The hippocampus, the region of your brain crucial for forming new memories, is one of the first areas affected by Alzheimer's. This isn't about getting older. This is about a specific, measurable change in how your brain processes and stores information. Now, before you panic about every forgotten detail, let me be clear. If you occasionally forget where you parked your car, but remember it later, that's normal. If you regularly forget entire conversations you had yesterday and have no recollection even when reminded, that's concerning. The difference is crucial. Make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell right now, because by the end of this video, I'm going to share a prevention strategy that neurologists are calling a game changer, and you won't want to miss it. The second sign is something that happens in social situations, and it's heartbreaking to watch. Picture yourself at a family dinner. Everyone's talking, laughing, sharing stories. But you notice something strange. You're struggling to follow the conversation, not because people are talking too fast or too quietly, but because you can't seem to hold on to the thread of what's being discussed. Someone asks you a question, and you realize you have no idea what the conversation has been about for the last 5 minutes. This is different from being distracted. This is your brain's inability to maintain focus and follow sequential information. Language difficulties are often one of the most distressing early signs of Alzheimer's. You might find yourself searching for common words, calling things by the wrong names, or stopping mid-sentence because you can't remember what you were trying to say. But here's where it gets really interesting and deeply troubling. Research shows that these language problems aren't random. They follow a specific pattern. You might start substituting words, calling a watch a hand clock, or a refrigerator a cold box. Your brain knows what the object is, what it does, but the precise word has become inaccessible. It's like having the answer on the tip of your tongue, except it never quite makes it to your lips. This happens because Alzheimer's affects the temporal and frontal lobes of your brain, regions critical for language processing and production. The neural pathways that connect concepts to words begin to deteriorate. What makes this particularly cruel is that the person experiencing it is often fully aware that something is wrong. They know they can't find the right word. They know they're struggling to express themselves. And that awareness can lead to withdrawal from social situations, which actually accelerates cognitive decline. It becomes a vicious cycle. The third sign involves something you do every single day, and when it starts to change, it's terrifying. Let's talk about getting lost, not in an unfamiliar city or a new building, but in your own neighborhood. Imagine driving home from the grocery store, a route you've taken thousands of times, and suddenly nothing looks familiar. The street signs don't make sense. You can't remember if you're supposed to turn left or right. Panic sets in. This is spatial disorientation, and it's one of the hallmark early symptoms of Alzheimer's disease. Your brain has an incredibly sophisticated navigation system. It uses landmarks, spatial relationships, and memory to create mental maps of your environment. In Alzheimer's, this system starts to fail. The parietal lobe, responsible for spatial awareness, becomes damaged. But here's what's absolutely fascinating from a neuroscience perspective. This doesn't just affect physical navigation. People in early stages of Alzheimer's also lose their ability to judge distances and determine spatial relationships. They might reach for a glass of water and completely misjudge how far away it is. They might struggle with stairs because they can't accurately perceive depth. There's also something called time disorientation that goes hand in hand with this. You might lose track of dates, seasons, or the passage of time. You might get dressed for a summer day in the middle of winter. You might think it's morning when it's actually evening. Your brain's internal clock and calendar are malfunctioning. This isn't just inconvenient, it's dangerous. This is when people with early Alzheimer's start wandering away from home and can't find their way back. If you're finding value in this information, do me a favor right now. Share this video with someone you care about. This could be the information that helps them or someone they love catch Alzheimer's early enough to make a real difference. And trust me, when I reveal the prevention strategies in just a few minutes, you'll understand why early detection is absolutely critical. The fourth sign shows up in how you make decisions, and it can have serious consequences. Think about the last major decision you made. Maybe it was a financial decision, a health decision, or a decision about your relationships. Now imagine if your ability to weigh options, understand consequences, and make sound judgments started to deteriorate. This is exactly what happens in Alzheimer's disease, and it's often one of the most overlooked early signs. Poor judgment and decision-making manifest in specific, observable ways. You might make unusual financial choices, like giving large amounts of money to strangers or falling for obvious scams that you would have seen through before. You might stop paying attention to personal hygiene or grooming, not because you don't care, but because the executive function part of your brain that manages these self-care routines is failing. You might dress inappropriately for the weather or social situations. Here's what's happening in your brain. The prefrontal cortex, your brain's CEO, is responsible for complex cognitive behaviors, decision-making, and moderating social behavior. In Alzheimer's, this region begins to deteriorate. The result is a decline in what neuroscientists call executive function. You lose the ability to plan, organize, and execute complex tasks. You might start a project and leave it half-finished because you can't remember the next steps. You might agree to commitments you can't possibly keep because you've lost the ability to accurately assess your own capabilities and time. What makes this particularly insidious is that from the outside, people might just think you're being irresponsible or careless. They don't realize that your brain is literally losing the capacity to make sound judgments. This is when financial exploitation becomes a real risk. This is when people make decisions about their health or safety that they would never have made before. And sadly, this is often when family members start to realize something is seriously wrong. The fifth and final sign is emotional, and it's often the most painful for families to witness. Personality changes. Your mother, who was always gentle and patient, becomes irritable and aggressive. Your father, who was the life of every party, becomes withdrawn and suspicious. These aren't just mood swings. These are fundamental changes in personality and behavior that signal something is wrong in the brain. Alzheimer's doesn't just affect memory and cognition. It affects the very essence of who you are. The disease can alter the brain regions responsible for regulating emotions and personality. You might experience increased anxiety, depression, or fearfulness. You might become paranoid, accusing people of stealing from you or plotting against you. You might lose interest in hobbies, social activities, and work projects that once brought you joy. This apathy isn't laziness or depression in the traditional sense. It's a neurological symptom of brain changes. Here's something that researchers have discovered that's absolutely crucial. These personality and behavioral changes often appear before significant memory loss. That means they can be an even earlier warning sign than memory problems. Some people become more impulsive and lose their social filters, saying inappropriate things they never would have said before. Others become extremely rigid and resistant to change, getting upset by even minor deviations from routine. The emotional toll this takes on families is immeasurable. They're watching someone they love transform into someone they barely recognize. And the person with Alzheimer's? They're often confused and distressed by their own reactions and feelings. They know something is different, but they can't quite identify what or why. Now here's where everything changes. Let's talk about prevention. I promised you at the beginning of this video that I would share prevention strategies that could be game-changing, and I'm about to deliver on that promise. But first, I need you to understand something critical. While we cannot completely prevent Alzheimer's disease with absolute certainty, research over the past decade has revealed that we can significantly reduce our risk and potentially delay onset by years or even decades. And those years matter. They matter immensely. The first prevention strategy is cardiovascular exercise, but not the way you think. We're not just talking about general fitness. We're talking about specific targeted exercise that increases blood flow to your brain. Studies have shown that aerobic exercise done for at least 150 minutes per week can actually increase the size of your hippocampus, that region of the brain we talked about earlier that's crucial for memory. Exercise promotes the growth of new brain cells and the connections between them. It reduces inflammation and insulin resistance, both of which contribute to Alzheimer's. Think of exercise as fertilizer for your brain. You're literally growing new neural pathways with every workout. The second strategy is diet, but we're going to be very specific here. The MIND diet, a combination of the Mediterranean and DASH diets, has been shown in research to reduce Alzheimer's risk by up to 53% in people who follow it rigorously. This diet emphasizes leafy greens, berries, nuts, whole grains, fish, and olive oil, while limiting red meat, butter, cheese, and sweets. The key compounds in these foods, things like omega-3 fatty acids, antioxidants, and anti-inflammatory agents, protect your brain cells from the damage that leads to Alzheimer's. Your brain is 60% fat, and the quality of fats you consume directly impacts brain health. The third prevention strategy is cognitive engagement, and this is where it gets really interesting. Your brain needs to be challenged constantly, but watching TV doesn't count. Neither does doing the same crossword puzzle difficulty level you've been doing for years. You need to push yourself into cognitive discomfort. Learn a new language. Take up a musical instrument. Engage in complex problem-solving activities that frustrate you. This cognitive reserve you build acts like a buffer. Even if Alzheimer's pathology begins to develop in your brain, a strong cognitive reserve means you can function normally for much longer. The fourth strategy is social connection. Loneliness and social isolation are as bad for your brain as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Regular, meaningful social interaction stimulates multiple regions of your brain simultaneously. You're processing language, reading emotional cues, managing social dynamics, accessing memories. It's a full brain workout. People with strong social networks have been shown to have a significantly lower risk of developing dementia. The fifth and perhaps most surprising prevention strategy is sleep. Deep sleep is when your brain clears out the beta amyloid plaques that are the hallmark of Alzheimer's disease. If you're consistently getting less than 7 hours of quality sleep, you're not giving your brain time to take out the trash. Those toxic proteins accumulate, and over years and decades, they cause the damage we see in Alzheimer's. Prioritizing sleep isn't lazy. It's one of the most important things you can do for your brain health. If you or someone you love is experiencing any of these 5 signs, don't wait. Don't brush it off as normal aging. Make an appointment with a neurologist. Early detection gives you more treatment options, more time to plan, and most importantly, more time to implement these prevention strategies that can slow progression. The medications and interventions available today are most effective in early stages. Take this video seriously. Share it with your family. Have honest conversations about brain health. Start implementing these prevention strategies today, not tomorrow, not next week, today. Your future self will thank you. Your family will thank you. Comment below and let me know which prevention strategy you're going to start with. I read every comment, and I want to support you on this journey. Remember, your brain is the most complex and precious organ in your body. It deserves your attention, your care, and your protection. Don't wait for signs to appear. Start preventing Alzheimer's right now. Thank you for watching, and here's to a long, healthy, cognitively vibrant life.